Welcome to Saints in the Parish. This is Father Steve Williams. Join us each week as we reflect on one particular aspect of Catholic teaching and spiritual life.
Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of Saints in the Parish. Glad to be here with myself and co-host Father Steve. We are also extremely happy because we have a guest on. This is Josh. Would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. My name's Josh Murphy. I just finished my freshman year at Auburn. I graduated from St. Michael Catholic High School, born and raised in Fairhope. Lifelong member or parishioner at St. Lawrence. So, yeah.
Well, we're happy to have you with us here. This is a very exciting show. So we want to talk a little bit about young people. That's why we invited Josh to be with us here, particularly as it pertains to young people in the church, being involved in youth ministry, being involved in campus ministry, as he'll talk to us a little bit about how campus ministry is at Auburn. All of the universities have a particular campus ministry program, a Catholic campus ministry program. I know we have a good friend, William Jarvis, who's the campus minister at the University of Alabama. So it's important to give the young people an opportunity to grow in their faith, in addition to their family. So we're going to talk a little bit about, your family growing up. We're going to talk a little bit about youth ministry in high school, which I know you were very involved in youth ministry in high school and at St. Michael, and then talk a little bit about campus ministry at Auburn University, which is pretty incredible. We have a lot of young people that are actually involved in that. So I think the point of our program this morning is going to be for parents and grandparents, how to talk to your young people about the faith, how to inspire them with the faith. There's two large groups of influence in a young person's formation, which we talk a lot about formation as opposed to just education. Formation is a spiritual education, if you want to think about it like that. So the two big groups would be your family and basically your peers, your friends. What do you do with your time? And both of those are really important today. And so we want to help you to think about it so that when you have the opportunity to go out with your grandson or your granddaughter, for breakfast or for dinner one night, you'll get into a conversation with them and you can talk to them a little bit about the faith. Well, how is your spiritual life? And or parents. I know the parents get an opportunity to engage with their young people quite often. And so you want to particularly be oriented toward helping them to grow in their faith. So, Josh, which one would you like to start with? You want to talk about growing? Let's talk about growing up in your family.
Yeah, let's do that. Yes, I'm one of six. I have two older brothers. Oldest is 26. He's married. Then I got a brother that's 23 in grad school at UAB. Then I have an older sister, then myself, then two younger sisters. There's six of us, and then my family does foster care. So we have a 5-year-old foster girl. So there's technically 7 of us. I've been born and raised in a big Catholic family.
I love middle children. Yeah. One of those. So being in the middle has its own. But so how was so I know your family and wonderful family, but so talk to us a little about growing up. Going to Catholic schools.
So I grew up. I went to Christ the King from kindergarten all the way through 8th grade, and then St. Michael freshman through senior year. So now being at Auburn is the first time I've ever not been with a Catholic school, which has been a change. But growing up, going to mass every Sunday, praying the rosary as a family at night, all that kind of stuff. Just growing up in the faith that really kind of, I think, prepared me now that I'm not at like a Catholic school or in a Catholic environment. Now that I'm out in the real world in a sense. Yeah, growing up in a good, strong Catholic family with good parents who loved me and
grandparents, because I know I know both sets of your grandparents, and I know your grandmother, God rest her soul, was a big influence on your family too. Your mother's mother, and I see you often with your dad's grandparents. They were at all your baseball games, and so I know that's important too. And so that's a great reminder to us of how important the family is and how the family plays a part in your formation. So in Donald Paul, being an only child, little different, right? Yes. So we have to make sure that we work with what we've been given. Okay, I mean, a lot of people, unfortunately, don't really have the family structure, and the family dynamics. And we want to say, well, okay, that's all right, but what can we do to progress in this journey of our faith life? I mean, I've seen a lot of young people that, in my opinion, did not have what Josh had in the way of family dynamics and have really done well because they were challenged at an early point in their lives and kind of accepted the challenge. And so now they're wonderful parents, to their children. And they did not have that luxury to have that family dynamic for themselves. And so it's important to understand that wherever you are, you need to take advantage of those opportunities. And so what are some of the opportunities that you've taken advantage of, particularly, I would say, as you've progressed through maybe high school and college?
Yeah, so at St. Michael, I think we had great campus ministry. We would have retreats every year that I would try to always go on, as well as at St. Lawrence and Christ the King both. I kind of would flip-flop between both youth ministries. Like a lot of times with Dylan, we'd have like a Monday night guys night that I was always trying to be there with. I think it's just good to be around other guys that are in the faith. So I try to take advantage of that. And then Life Teen as well on Sundays at St. Lawrence. And then Father Victor would do Rooted and just different types of like youth activities where you could be around other people that like have the same beliefs as you. And really to like be in a faith-centered environment. So I try to take advantage of that as much as possible. And
I know you're a kind of a leader in a lot of those situations, so I think this is important, as your grandchild or your children are being formed and they emerge, you find yourself in a lot of leadership opportunities and follow opportunities. And this is really important, okay? This is really important. If you have leadership skills, then you have to become a leader, okay? If you have leadership skills and you say, I don't really feel like it, I don't want to do it, I don't want to lead, I don't want to, it's difficult to be a follower. I mean, it just is. It's difficult to be a follower. And then in a sense, I think also God has given you some of these skills, and so you have to use those skills. Now, the reverse is true. And now a lot of parents don't want to hear this. A lot of parents do not want to hear this. But if you have the skill set more of a follower, you see yourself, identifying with someone and you jump on board and you're following, that's fine. That's perfectly fine as long as you're following someone who's leading you in a good place, down a good road. Obviously, you don't want to be a follower leading to a dead-end road or somewhere. And you were a good leader, I think, for a couple of reasons. One is you did encourage a lot of other people, probably had a good influence on a lot of other people younger than you, because I remember you gave a couple of great talks on retreat. So you saw yourself as really one who was trying to get other people involved in youth ministry. And even when you're at the in class, on the football team, in youth ministry, all of the different aspects of the areas, the things you were involved in, you tried to help a lot of other young people grow in their faith. So talk to me a little bit about that. I mean, in using your leadership skills and all the different facets of your life.
Yeah, I think I was gifted with some pretty unique, cool opportunities. I think like playing quarterback for St. Michael's football team was awesome just because you kind of get a platform as a quarterback. Like I think that's a specific position where you are kind of like forced into leadership in a sense. So I kind of had to learn how to be a leader. And I think that was huge because I think a lot of times, like our coaches would talk about this, but the football team a lot of times can really set the tone for the culture of the school. So if you have a football team where the guys are, not following the faith, they're, doing things really contrary to the faith, then I think the school is going to follow that. Whereas if you have the football team following the faith, taking their faith seriously, then I think that can have a huge impact on the school. So I think that was kind of my goal, was just to try to be the best leader that I could be with my words, but also just with my actions. I think, you can't just be all talk. You have to show it with your actions. So I think that was huge too.
And maybe not something that people really want to think about, but I mean, that was the end of your football career. I think I remember that last game you played, and you knew you wasn't going to play football, in an organized way ever again. So life goes on. And so you want to make sure that that opportunity is taken in a good spiritual way or whatever it may be. Donald Paul, I know you've talked a little bit about you being at campus ministry at South Alabama, and that had kind of an impact in your life, that you kind of came to that realization. Talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, how did you see your faith in the church, and now you find yourself as a freshman at South Alabama, ultimately led you to discerning a vocation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Josh's family situation is like, I wouldn't say ideal, like there's no ideal, like perfect family, but if you kind of were to, look in the dictionary of like, a good Catholic family, like that's kind of what you want to see, like big family, like praying the rosary together, encouraging the faith, like that's like the best seed ground for nurturing the faith. I was an only child, wasn't a bad family in any means, but we didn't really pray together. We didn't, but I went to Catholic school. So I had the kind of, cultural aspect and, never really took the faith super seriously. Never like denied the faith, just didn't really do anything with it. And then got to college and, did the college thing for a little while and then realized that I was unhappy and, kind of miserable, didn't have friends.
There wasn't that, it was kind of hollow, right? I mean, it just wasn't a certain peacefulness. Yeah. It wasn't fulfilling. And how often today do we talk to a lot of young people like Josh's age that, do all of those things that society says you have to do, and they just don't find they're really life fulfilling. Yeah. They chase money, they chase girls, they chase all kind of different aspects, or boys, whatever it may be, and they don't really find themselves fulfilling. Now,
and I think also too with that, like there's like different kind of levels, I guess, of like, especially in college, like you have the like, you go like crazy, like you see on TV and stuff. And like, I didn't do that, but like, I just kind of did the college thing. Like I had a girlfriend, like, went to class, but like, I didn't really do anything else. And even though I wasn't like, quote unquote, like doing bad things, like I was still unfulfilled. Like there was still a gap there that I couldn't quite get across myself.
Yeah. And so that led you to a slight change in your vocational situation. Now, that's not to say that there's not a lot of college students out there that are in fraternities or sororities that are happy, doing really well. I know a bunch of those, and they are fulfilled. So again, keep in mind, I go back to what I said before, everyone has given a different, hand to play. Not everyone's not given the exact same hand. So you can't say, well, I really wish my son or my daughter is like them or like them. No, I mean, everyone has to. That's why we pray. That's why we have mentors. That's why I have spiritual direction. That's why, to lead and guide us. That's the whole reason why God even gave these young people parents, and grandparents to really help them along. Now, I want to change this a little bit. Josh, a lot of opportunities to what I would say take advantage of some good opportunities to get involved in retreats and or pilgrimages, or like, what are you going to do with your time? Okay. I know a lot of students just want to go on a vacation and just kind of, okay, which is great, particularly if they go on vacation with their family. But then if you can go on vacation with your friends, but if you take advantage of something that's going to help you grow in your faith, it is amazing. And so you think back to PCR, which is a kind of it's a teenage retreat that, Christ the King put on for many, many years. If you think back to Cove Crest or any of the opportunities that we had that high school students have that are like, that are week-long camps, which are really important. I say take advantage of all of those you can, or just particularly you just returned from a pilgrimage with some college students from Auburn. And I think to myself, what's the difference in the 10 days that you spent on this pilgrimage than if you went to the beach for 10 days, for instance, with some of your friends? So what's the difference there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the coolest part is, it was a group of all college kids who were invested in their faith and really care about like that. We're not just there to have the good food that you have. Like we were in Italy, we're not just there to have the good food or there to just, hang out and have fun. Though we did do that. I mean, we were there to see, all these different saints' relics and to go to all these beautiful churches, to go to a papal audience, celebrate daily mass every day in these beautiful, wonderful churches that you don't really have the opportunity to see churches like that in America, unfortunately. But
and how many reconciliation in St. Peter's Cathedral? It's like 150 priests in all different languages.
I mean, every confessional booth just has the light on and it says what language they're in. And I went to a Jesuit priest who like barely knew any English, but it was cool because you just are going to a priest who's like who knows 5 languages. It's just cool to see how universal the faith is. I think the papal audience was really cool because Pope Francis gave his Wednesday catechesis, and whatever language he said it in, but then they had like 8 other languages where they just translated it. It was just cool to see how universal the faith is, as well as like when you're in St. Peter's Basilica in all these different chapels, there's just mass going on in different languages, which is powerful to just see how universal the faith is. Because I think sometimes we can get caught up in our little bubble of South Alabama and who else, like, where does this matter anywhere else? So I think going on a pilgrimage versus just going on a vacation is, like we went with Father Payton, and he talked about this a lot of how a pilgrimage it's not just to see cool sights or stuff, but it's actually to like, in the tradition of the church, to bring intentions, to go to these saints' relics and pray for people. So bringing intentions of family members and going to their favorite saint's tomb and being able to intercede for them and pray for them was really powerful. And for me, being able to see a couple saints that I really have a particular devotion to, like especially my favorite saint, I'd say, is Saint Francis Xavier. And we went to the Jesuit church there, and his arm where he baptized thousands and thousands of Christians is partially incorrupt in the church there, and you could just see it on display. So just going there and being able to sit there with him and just pray and just be like, wow, it was just powerful. It almost felt like I've never been there before, but it felt like just being in Rome, being in Italy, like it just felt like going home, because like the church, it was like, and seeing the catacombs where the early martyrs were, it was just powerful to see, okay, this is where my roots are, all of our roots are, really, even though I've never been there before.
And Stephen, St. Peter's, to see how active it is. I mean, there's ordinations going on, there's weddings in St. Peter's, there's of course masses going on all the time, and so it's not a museum.
Matter of fact, we were at St. Paul outside the walls, and there was actually there was a woman there's a cardinal there celebrating a mass, transitioning a woman from a servant of God to a venerable or blessed, one of the two. I don't remember what she was going to, but it was really cool. Like we were just there, we were just walking around in the church, and then there's just some cardinal there celebrating mass. So it's just cool to see that it's like active again. Like it's not just a museum. There was a beautiful liturgy going on of someone on their path to canonization, which was really, really powerful to see.
Yeah, so we're talking about young people in the church, and specifically now we're talking to Josh Murphy about being in high school or college, because he's a sophomore at Auburn University. So he's kind of had that opportunity, and so if you want to ask us a question, about, we're going to have a future, we're going to have a program in the future, another podcast with another young person, and you can ask some questions, hit review, and just let us, ask some of the questions that you have on your mind. One of the questions that we're getting ready to ask him is what kind of, and it's not advice, but what kind of suggestions might you have to help your young people that you may know to grow in faith? I will say that your prayers and grandparents have a particular role in their relationship with their grandchildren. Your prayers are just invaluable and so helpful to the formation of your young people. And also, I'm reminded of the mercy of God. We cannot realize that, the mercy that God, the depthness of God's mercy and how he offers us. So at any point in your young person's life that they want to turn it around and become closer to Jesus, they can. Now, the challenge is we live in America. This is a challenge. And, we want it instantly. We want it, immediately. So, and I've talked to a lot of young people that have gone in the wrong direction, and they recognize that and they want to turn around, but they want to be, they want to be like perfect immediately. And I'm trying my best to explain to them that, you didn't get where you were overnight, and you're not going to get out of it overnight. It's a process. It's a process whereby slowly but surely you continue to develop a good prayer life, certainly continue to worship God at Mass, continue to do charitable deeds. I mean, there's a process. You can't take a 90-mile-an-hour speeding train going in the wrong direction, stop it, turn it around, and get it to go 90 miles an hour in the right direction. Doesn't happen instantaneously. And unfortunately, again, a lot of things do happen instantaneously in America. And so we just assume that can happen with our faith life. It can't. It can't. It takes time. That developing that relationship is really important. Now,
I'm reminded while you're saying that, for some reason, I am way behind the ball, and I've just started listening to the Bible in a Year podcast. Yeah. 4 years after it first came out, but I'm totally engrossed. I'm I listen to 5 a day, on my, yeah. I mean, if you haven't listened to it, I highly encourage it. It's 25, 30 minutes. This is a small plug for Ascension's podcast, but, so I'm working my way through that because I'm trying to catch up. I'm 100 and something days behind because I started in March, but right now we're almost through the book of Exodus. And so you're talking about this journey, and it reminds me of God walking his people through the desert in Egypt, right? So he gets them out, he breaks them out of slavery with Moses, but it's a gradual revealing of God to his people. So he can't say, they were enslaved for 400 years. He can't say, slavery is evil and wrong and you should never do it. It's got to be, well, okay, this is a reality in the world. So here's stipulations on slavery. And it's a gradual revealing and a change of heart to the people. And it takes, years and years and years, right? So it's not an immediate turn, like you said. You can't just be going in one direction and stop and go the other way. You've got to, God gradually reveals himself. God gradually helps and gives us the tools to turn our lives around. And that's kind of what happened to me, right? It wasn't, I already had the tools. I kind of started straying, and then God brought me back, and now it's been a continual journey to not only to get back on the right path, but to then keep going. And I was in college multiple years ago.
And again, that's probably true for most people. It's nothing massive. It's nothing major. It's a little slowly but surely, moving maybe in the wrong direction, and then having to kind of right the ship. And yourself having to turn a big, enormous ship is not easy, and that's probably the way it is in our faith life. So, want to talk a little bit, this isn't meant to be, too personal, but I think it's important to talk about relationships. And I think, because you'll have a lot of influence on your young people and talking to them about their formation of their understanding of relationships. And, so I think it's a good topic to talk about, because most of the young people in high school or college are going to be dating, and you'll have a good opportunity to talk to them. That's a great opportunity to talk to them about relationships, how important relationships are. So, over your time, in high school or college, and your formation of understanding relationships, how has that been?
So I think it was interesting growing up in Catholic schools, being around a lot of other Catholic people, but still having a hard time finding a group of people that really were still pushing me to be better in my faith. I think that was something that took me a while to find. And even going through high school, with guys, it was harder finding guys to be that were really into the faith to push me, and that really didn't happen until 1 year ago, I went and worked at a Catholic summer camp, and I met a bunch of guys who really were on fire for the Lord. We were camp counselors at a Catholic summer camp, and like that was the first time I really like encountered a bunch of other guys who were really into their faith and really pushed me to be better, which was really cool. So that was cool for that, and then as well as with the relationships you said, like dating. I've had a girlfriend for about 2.5 years, and just a girl who like I knew if I wanted to be with her, I had to be a good man, and so I had to learn how to be, I had to learn how to be charitable. I had to learn how to be more loving. So I think that was huge, having a girlfriend who really was pushing me to be better, be a better man.
But you also, when you were even younger, and this is important in terms of formation, to understand what is a good relationship. I mean, parents, having to talk to their children about what is a good relationship, and then parents have to understand what a good relationship. They're probably going to learn a lot of it through osmosis by just watching the parents grow. But also we live in a society now that the world doesn't necessarily support marriage and support a good relationship, because everything kind of is relative these days. But you received a good education and good understanding of what to be in a good relationship meant, and that's really helped you, certainly with your girlfriend, I would say, and you're still growing in that, but you're growing with someone else that's on the same, idea or understanding of where you are, right? Yeah. And that, how important is that?
Oh yeah, and definitely incredibly important. Like I think even like one of our first dates we went on was like going to mass and then going to get dinner, and it's like that's so invaluable. It's incredible to have somebody else that like you don't have to like force them to want to be in the faith with you. Like she wants to be in the faith. She's from a faithful Catholic family, so I think just that background has just been huge for me to grow in my faith.
So she's encouraging you to grow in your faith. You're encouraging her to grow in your faith. And you know that both of y'all are going to benefit greatly from both of y'all growing your relationship. I might also say that Don Paul, who just recently celebrated his first anniversary of marriage, so I know he was super happy with that. And of course, he's a father of a new little baby boy, James. So, and he's excited about that. But that's true with you too. So you had the opportunity, to understand what made a good relationship, a relationship based on Christ. And let me throw in a plug for something called Outback. It's a retreat that goes on once or twice a year. And it's two people. It's always just two people, and the third is Jesus. So it can be husband, wife, it can be mother, daughter, father, son. It can be any two people, any two relationships. And the whole point of the retreat is Christ has to be the third person. And you recognize how important that is with your wife, Julia.
Yeah, I mean, I was in seminary, so I learned a lot about relationships, kind of external, like I wasn't in a dating relationship in seminary. So you kind of learn the, self-reflection and learning about yourself so that,
But you understand sacramentally how important marriage is, right? Exactly. But it's just in a book.
Right, exactly. So then, get out of seminary, meet my future wife, we start dating, and, so you start to recognize, I know how I am and she knows how she is. And so together we can grow. But I think very early on in our relationship, we both realized that for anything to flourish, like we can't be in the center, right? So the Lord is in the center. And then the dynamic of our marriage, so our relationship together, is centered on Christ. So my primary goal is to get her to heaven, and her primary goal is to get me to heaven. And then so if that's the relationship, God is at the center, then everything else kind of flows down from that. So the love that we have for each other is centered in the love that we have for God.
Jesus talks a lot about the fruit of your spiritual life. He uses that image all the time, and then you get the blessings of seeing that fruit of that relationship that you just talked about coming about in your child.
Right.
How precious is that?
Right. No, absolutely. And I think it's also, this is a lot of times the world now is really shifting away from this too, but there's also kind of a hierarchy in the relationship. So like we both would like die for our son, obviously. Right. I would die for her, vice versa, right? But the primary relationship in our relationship, first of all, is to God, so our individual relationships. And then the second is with each other. So we recognize that even though we probably love our son more than we love each other, because that's kind of how it works, we recognize that if she and I's relationship is not healthy, that relationship is not going to be healthy. So even though in the busyness and the craziness of being married and working and caring for a child, we can't neglect our relationship together, or all of our other relationships then become disordered.
I don't think you're going to have to die, but let me tell you, you're going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. Yes. I mean, it is incredible. Children, I think, God knows what he's doing, and he gave us these children, and it reminds us we're not the sinner. Mm-hmm. We can't be selfish. We can't say, no, I don't feel like going, they're one. They're 3, they're 8. I mean, no, we have to, take off and help them because they need help and they can't help themselves, and you're trying to help move them toward that good, healthy relationship. I tell parents all the time, do you know what the best thing you can do for your children, the best gift you can give your children is to be a good husband, is to be a good wife. That is the best gift you can give your children. Again, they're learning through osmosis. What are they doing? They're watching day in and day out, how a father treats his wife, a mother treats her husband. They see that, and that has an enormous impact on them, and they're probably learning, and it's probably subconscious. They don't even know they're learning that, and it's probably really subconscious. I know what you're sitting there thinking to yourself, well, where are you going with this? I think where I'm going with this is, do you not see the development of formation? Josh is talking about his family. He's talking about early childhood education, and then high school, and all the ways in which he, worked to develop, his spiritual life in high school, and continues to do that in college. Because again, if he chooses the married life, as Donald Paul did, he's going to bring all of that into that relationship. Okay, bring that into the relationship. I love to cook. Well, it's one of the most important things about cooking is, first of all, you have to have quality ingredients, right? You have to have quality ingredients. The second thing is, you have to mix it and prepare it and bake it at the right temperature. And trust me, I've tried following the instructions. I've tried not following the recipe. It does not turn out as good as it turns out if you follow the instructions. I mean, it's just that simple. And so part of what we're trying to understand here is how the impact of your spiritual life and your relationship with Christ is now in high school or in college is going to have an impact on the rest of your life, regardless of what vocation. And I know Josh has several friends that have chosen to discern a vocation to the priesthood. And we appreciate that immensely too. So, it leads you to where Christ wants you to go if you're cooperative and if you're kind of working with Christ. I know this is a great subject, you can tell. I've been involved in youth ministry now almost 40 years and helped young people, a wide variety of young people, and I've had the opportunity to marry quite a few couples in my life as a priest, and I've had to help some couples, and I don't really do a whole lot of marriage counseling. I'll send a couple to a marriage counselor, so it's nice to have good Catholic marriage counselors that we can go to when we need help. But anyway, back to the question that I said that you were going to get asked here at the end of the show is, what do you think are some things that you could offer some parents or grandparents or some adults that would something that would really help their young people grow closer to Christ?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it earlier. I think the first thing is just praying for them. I think sometimes like intercessory prayer, we don't always see like the grace, like what God is doing whenever we intercede, but I think that's so vitally important, as well as just reflecting on this question, like don't water down the faith. Like we expect our kids to know calculus. We expect our kids to go to football practice for 2 hours a day. We expect them to excel in school. We should also demand that same excellence when it comes to the faith. Like, we should expect them, like,
even if they say I don't really get a whole lot out of it.
but that's not the point. You know, like, the point is not to get something out of it. Like they may not get much out of calculus, but like if they failed it, well, then they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Well, like if
they cheat and build a bridge, right, the bridge may not stand, right? So we don't want them to cheat either.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's just huge because, I mean, I think like we expect this greatness out of them. I think we should also expect the same thing when it comes to the faith. Like if we're going to expect them to strive for all these other things, they need to strive for the faith. It needs to be the most important thing in their life. And I think there's two ways that we do this with the youth, is by catechesis, but also like personal encounter with Jesus. And I think at different times in the church, we've focused more on one than the other. And sometimes like you can see the imbalance there, but there has to be a good balance where, say, if all you teach them is catechesis, then it's just going to be kind of like there's no connection with the Lord. There's no relationship. I think we've seen that in the past. I think the church has tried to combat that. But then on the other side, the other extreme sometimes is we can get away from catechesis and people just don't really know anything and they just think that it's all about a relationship. But the way the church works is you have to have both. And working at a Catholic summer camp last summer, again, I went there as a kid and had a huge encounter with Jesus through the Eucharist there. That was kind of where, like growing up in a Catholic family, I was always into my faith, but I kind of had strayed a little bit once I got to high school, and I just kind of got a little secular. So being there, like just being in the power of the Eucharist and being convicted of how this is Jesus right here and he loves me, like that was huge. And from there, like that's like it starts with encounter is what I've seen. And then working there, like when you drive up onto the campus, it's Catholic Youth Summer Camp. It's in Ohio. It's ran by a mission group called Damascus. In fact, a lot of St. Lawrence parishioners have gone there for a week of camp there. But when you drive up the hill to the campus, there's a huge sign that says, be prepared to encounter Jesus Christ. And I think that is what the church and what everybody needs to be offering our young people is be prepared when you come to the church to encounter Jesus Christ. This is not just a set of rules. This is not just an old tradition. This is not just an old church that is getting cobwebs and is fading away because the world has better things to do. Like, no, this is the church Jesus Christ founded, and it's forever present and it's never going to go away. And once you encounter Jesus, that's what happens. That's when it clicks. I've seen many campers who came to camp and they'd gone to Catholic school, they'd gone to mass every Sunday, and they're like, well, yeah, like this is cool, but it's just really not for me. And then you get them in front of Jesus in the Eucharist, and like you have these kids who seemingly before didn't care, and they're just weeping in front of the Eucharist, like, wow, this is Jesus. And before that instance, if I would have tried to talk to them about, well, do you know what transubstantiation means? And but then once they had that initial encounter with Jesus, the questions that they would ask me, they would flow questions in, like all these different types of questions about, well, what is this saint? Like, why are they so important? And why do we have to know this? Like, why do we need to know what the gifts of the Holy Spirit are and the fruits of the Holy, like, why do we need to know all these things? And so I think like it starts with the youth is we have to get them to encounter Jesus, but then we also have to properly catechize them. You have to have both, and I think that's really what we need to focus on with the youth.
And that balance.
Yeah, because I think at times we've lost both sides of that in different ways. I think more recently we've kind of lost a lot of catechesis. I think a lot of young people don't really know anything about the faith, but I think there's also been times in the church where we really haven't given them a proper. We haven't like I've talked about this with people. We've taught the youth how to say their prayers, but we haven't taught them how to pray. Like for me, myself, like I knew how to say the Our Father and the Hail Mary and the Glory Be growing up. But like, did I know how to like read scripture and like talk to Jesus more than just like say a prayer like, oh, Jesus, and so like learning how to actually pray, I think understanding who Jesus is and having a personal relationship with him, like that's the foundation. And then from there, so much can be built upon that. So I think that's been the biggest help for me was like learning how to pray, learning how to relate to the Lord, like going into the Adoration Chapel right down the street at Christ the King, was huge. And just understanding relationship with the Lord and understanding how to communicate with him. And then from there, theology class and the proper catechesis at youth group and at St. Michael. And that's really how you develop, a good Catholic, really.
There's a lot of adults out there, sadly enough, that probably haven't ever made that transformation. They haven't taken that next step. You're never too late. Again, never too late. Take that next step. I mean, just go sit at the Adoration Chapel for an hour. I mean, just make that kind of carve out a little time in your life.
And I think too, that's kind of what we do all the times. Like, we do all of these classes for the parishioners, and it's typically not our youth that come to them, right? It's the very faithful parishioners that are always at Mass. Absolutely. So like they are encountering the Lord at Mass, and now they are trying to learn more in catechesis. So it is a both. Like, Catholicism is always a both and. It's not an either or. Right. And I think what you said is perfect. Like, you can look back at church history and you can see almost to the year, like, where the church is like shifted back and forth between, a more rationalistic or a more relationship oriented. And I think the Holy Spirit works in both of those. So like, the Holy Spirit is moving the church, but again, it's the harmony of both. Like, if you look back at the church fathers, if you look back at Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, like all these people.
Or even the popes now. One pope stresses one, another pope would stress another. But
like, one of the criteria for what the church says a church father is like holiness and sanctity of life. There's like 4 criteria, and that's one of them, right? So it's not just what they taught was good, what they taught was helpful, and that they were close to the apostles, but it's also that they were holy. There's only a few that are not saints, and that's just because what they said is so important that it's valuable to the church. But like St. Augustine, is probably one of the greatest intellectual minds of the Western, not just the church, but just in the world. And he was also like, pretty much a mystic. Like, he was that devoted to the Lord. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest intellectual thinkers of the church, had mystical experiences, and said all of this is fluff compared to what I've experienced, in the Eucharist. And that's what it means to be Catholic. Like, it's both, and I think for parents, for grandparents, that's what is inspiring to young people. I'm 26. I'm still young. I'm out of college, so I wouldn't consider myself necessarily a young person. But I know for me and for people that I talk to, like you said, watering down the faith, like, people want to be challenged, and the youth and our younger generations, we think that they won't understand, but you actually like need to challenge and say like, no, it is rational. Like, it's not, we don't believe in a big, cloud in the sky. Like, this is a person, and this is like, we have a 2,000-year intellectual history that we can actually look back on and say, no, this is why we believe this. And because of that, like, you can have a relationship with Jesus because he's a person. I mean, it informs both, and it goes back and forth. So I think you just have to encourage your young people to do that.
And we could sit here and talk about this for a long time, but we will have some more podcasts with some young people. And again, encourage you to ask some questions that you think, some topics about that we can discern. Love that. I would love to offer a blessing here as we conclude our podcast. And our blessing is for your families. Because I believe the families not only is the fabric of our society. I believe the family is when you had your child baptized, in the prayer at the end of baptism said, you're the first teachers of your child in the ways of faith. May you be the best teachers of your child in the way of faith. It is the domestic church is your family. And so we need to pray for our families, and you need to pray for all those other families out there that are struggling, that are really having a difficult time in their family life. So I'd like to offer a special blessing upon all of our families, your children, your grandchildren. We ask Almighty God to bless them, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hope y'all have a wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Saints in the Parish Podcast. Please like, share, and leave a review, as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel as we all seek to become saints in the parish. God bless.